we will have Mary, who is the Senior Developer Advocate at DataSec. She will be talking about how to enter the brave new world of Gen AI with vector search. Gen AI is really hot topic recently, so please enjoy.
Welcome everyone to my talk today, and thank you to API Days Hong Kong again for having me this year. Today, let's all enter this new brave world of Gen AI. So my talk is about generative AI and also introducing to you about vector search, this capability, how it can be achieved too. So let's all enter this brave new world together. My name is Mary Grygleski. I'm a developer advocate at DataStax, a company that's based in Santa Clara, California, the USA. So this is the agenda. Let's first have an introduction, and then I'll give you a brief background of AI, especially for those perhaps is new to you about AI and machine learning. But if you are already familiar, please bear with me. So I kind of, have this concepts, at least the general concepts, put everybody on the same page, essentially. And then, after this brief background, I'll kind of lead this into this fascinating evolution of Gen AI that we live in. As we all know, ChatGPT has taken the world by storm. So it's time to talk more about it. And then after we talk a bit about Gen AI, then naturally it leads into the generative pre-trained transformers, GPTs. We'll discuss a bit of the history of that too. And then we'll also then go into a bit more of the model of the more of the studies that goes behind it, which is natural language processing, as well as the models, large language models, LLMs. If you're familiar with, have been working with AI, everybody has heard of LLMs, and the prompt engineering that it has. Then I'll introduce to you vector search and also vector database, what it is, right? And also the embeddings that are being used, and also a technique called approximate nearest neighbor that's helpful to do similarity search. And after this, if we have time, as such, the sessions here are quite short. So if we have time, I'm going to also do a quick demo. So it depends on time. If not, too, is that I'm already have it on this slide deck, a link to an exercise that you can try out yourselves. And plus, I will introduce you to to sign up for a free use of the DataStax Astra database with vector search, this capability too. So after this, then we'll discuss a bit about the benefits of Gen AI, and then also challenges. With great power comes great responsibility. So we need to be, aware of the challenges as well. And then after that, I'll share with you the resources. So let's begin. Introduction. So my name is Mary Grygleski. I'm a senior developer advocate at DataStax. DataStax is a company that's well known for its Apache Cassandra project because we have folks working in it. And so, when ChatGPT came out too, it's kind of becoming natural. Our database, design implementers, they're already so familiar with it. So to them too, it wasn't even, quite, not that hard for them. In fact, they implemented this vector DB and the search capability very, very quickly too. So, and then of course, to Cassandra itself also is a very robust NoSQL database. But yeah, so a bit of the background, of the company, if you're not familiar with it, but I actually joined them to help with the streaming project, which is powered by Apache Pulsar. Then also company recently acquired a company that does feature engineering. It's called Cascada too. But so kind of back to myself, I'm a passionate advocate. I'm also a Java champion, and I'm also active with the tech community. And currently, I run the Chicago Java users group. So as such, I'm based in Chicago. And then the other things I've worked on are mainly open source software, event-driven types of software, Java enterprise, framework like Jakarta EE, frameworks such as Open Liberty, and also reactive systems. So these are like how you can get a hold of me, but I'll share the links as to how you can stay in touch with me towards the end of this presentation. So let's kind of start then get into a brief background of AI. I feel that there's a need to kind of set the stage a little bit. But first, let's take a look at some history as early as 400 to 500 BC. And in fact, that's where, when I was doing research, I realized that there are some, scholars or the research people would say that, really, if you want to count that, anything that's kind of automated, that's kind of being done by some sort of robots. But of course, the early days, they were pretty mechanical type of, automation that, is basically powered by mechanical rather than digital as it is today, which was, 400, 500 BC was the steam-powered pigeon, and that was a flying pigeon, right? And that was developed and created by the Greek philosopher Archytas. So I thought I'd mention about it. But then, it's interesting stuff, but it really doesn't have too much direct bearing on us. So let's take a look in the last 100 years or so, the 20th century. So as we can see over here, then basically around like World War II timeframe, right? 1938, 1940, that timeframe, that's when kind of all the, a lot of books written about science fiction about, there's called golden age of science fiction, that talks about machines taking over the world, robots and all of these things. And then like in 1950 or so, then we see Alan Turing, who's the father of modern computer science, right? And he also wrote about, can machine actually think, right? So that's an interesting topic that was already kind of being kind of researched into. And then of course, then after that too, is that there are tons of, projects that came up, including, at MIT, the AI lab, in Massachusetts too, and where I also have kind of been to, and kind of pretty amazing. I lived there before. But anyway, so all of these, right, as we can see, it's kind of evolved, and then into the, the right around the turn of the century, that's when artificial intelligence at that time was mostly about the robots, right, a bit more like robotic type of things. And in terms of prompt, though, I have to mention that actually, I was involved too a bit with the Free Software Foundation, and they have the Emacs editor, if you're familiar with that. And in fact, they have a thing called like Ask the Doctor kind of functionality you can try. It's a prompt-based, but very early stage of prompt-based, kind of like you ask, I'm not feeling well, then it answers back with saying that, where are you not feeling well? Something like that is kind of a more primitive, but nonetheless, that was kind of an early stage of a chat bot type of thing. All right, so when we get into it, right, you think deeper, is actually all these robots, all of these things, the computers are all about automation. The difference, I think, is that, in artificial intelligence that it implies is that we want to actually have the computer be able to think on its own. If you're just doing pure computers, would be like you program, it's something more like you program it, you guide it, and then it follows your instruction and does the things that you tell it to do. But for this, it's going to be powerful and also can be scary, is the fact that AI, you can basically teach it to think on its own. So that can be scary as well. And let's take a look too. And this particular Venn diagram, I guess folks are familiar with it, or you have seen it, in which, how do you classify? There's machine learning, there's deep learning, then of course, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is being thought of as more like an encompassing, an umbrella term that it describes, right? This particular, category of studies, research studies that mimics, the intelligence or behavior patterns of human beings or any other living entity. So it can be robotic stuff and all of these things. It's more a general term, a bit more abstract also in my mind thinking of it. And then underneath it too is basically machine learning is the next layer of this onion, in which, is a technique, by which a computer can learn, from the data. And then from the data without using any complex set of different rules. That means you don't really program it, but it's more like you giving it data, so it learns the data and then it figures things out. And this approach is mainly based on, training the model from different data sets too. And then if you go deeper into the core of this onion, which is the deep learning, I think supposedly too, there's another layer sort of like little bit outside of it is the neural networks too. But otherwise too, the very deep one is deep learning that involves, it's also perform machine learning. The difference is that, it's actually doing things that mimic how the human brain thinks, how neurons kind of communicate with each other too inside our brain. So that's pretty fascinating. So then, all of these things, let's then jump ahead now to the present era of generative AI. So let's take a look, like what is generative AI, Gen AI, right? So it is a very disruptive field in AI. And why is it so? Why is it different? Because it has the potential to change the way how we create as well as consume contents. And basically, it's different too in the sense that we generate the content based on prompts. So prompts are sort of, think of it like questions, right? That you need to ask. You need to ask for it. So that's why it's very important that prompts are actually, in order for you to look for most accurate answer, you do need to be very sharp with what you're asking for. And so that's kind of like the key. It generates the contents based on prompts that you give it. And it uses a combination of machine learning and deep learning to produce these contents too. And then a word like I like to point out is that Gen AI, it tends to be focusing more on the creative side, meaning, what we have heard of, right? Like, Chat GPT can write a poem for you, can write an essay for a school homework, and then also for like composing a song, designing fashion, all of these, writing an article, all of these things, they're kind of more on the artistic side, if you may say so. And then the thing is, though, Gen AI may be newer, but then what is actually already been working for quite some time, not that new, is the predictive AI, which deals with, as the name implies, is kind of dealing with prediction. So what it is, though, I think if you kind of differentiate, one aspect is that predictive AI tends to focus more on the practical, kind of more business side, business forecasting, weather forecasting, marketing kind of forecasting, that type of stuff. It tends to be also short-lived too. For example, weather forecasting, you get the data and it's only applicable for, up to the day that you want to, kind of get the prediction for. So it tends to be kind of short-lived and also kind of more takes the data and analyze it too, and then comes up with some prediction in that. That's why it's predictive AI. Now, since the new millennium, like 2000, you see that there are a couple kind of projects that kind of helps to move towards the current Gen AI time. 2003, there's the Yoshua Bengio, his team developed the first feed-forward neural network language model. And then in 2011, I think we're familiar with this, which is, the first iPhone that has Siri. So Apple actually brings together AI and the NLP assistants to be able to produce, to make a Siri. And then 2013 is a group of Google researchers led by Thomas Mikaloff, and that they created the Word2Vec, which is basically learning from a large data set of data, and then using neural network to be able to kind of learn the word associations too. Word2Vec is like turning words, change them, transform to vector. And then 2017, another group of Google researchers led by Ashish Vaswani, they proposed a simple kind of network architecture. It's called the transformer. That's where I think it's kind of slowly, it's like moving towards the current era of GPT, all of these things. So now that comes to the point of talking about GPT, which is generative pre-trained transformer. So what is it, right? So basically, too, GPT, it takes the prompts and then in human language, format as input, unlike what we are, maybe if you're developers, you're more used to writing code, you need to follow a certain pattern in order to ask very kind of rigid way as input. But with GPT, you can ask in human language, and I'm sure we have all tried ChatGPT. You ask about, how many, books are written by Shakespeare, something like that, right? For example. So you can ask in human language, which is like a big progress too. And so this is actually what this is really about, is about pattern matching, right? And also is what is called similarity search, So it's a special kind of search, and it operates too on vector data type, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. And so it answers questions for the prompts. And it produced content such as like writing an essay or a blog post or a new computer program, right? As we all kind of know too, like GitHub Copilot, folks, maybe some of you have tried to. Okay, so now let's take a closer look into GPT. It started showing up at around like 2018, so really not too long ago, right? 5 years ago. First, Alec Radford in 2018 produced a paper on generative pre-training GPT of a language model that's republished on OpenAPI's website. Then 2019, OpenAPI then releases the complete version of the GPT-2 language model. I mean, as such, too, it's trained on a smaller data set than it is what we have today in GPT-4. And then, okay, here we go. And then we go into like 2020s. Well, when you take a look at it, it's only little over a year ago. It's the stable trend diffusion, right? We might have heard of a deep learning text to image model that generates images based on text descriptions too. So it leads to the rise of other diffusion based type of image services like DALL-E and Midjourney too. And then again, then 2022, now that's the big thing, is ChatGPT 3.5 that got released on November 30th, 2022. And then within 5 days, it reached like 1 million users. Everybody is excited about it because it really is revolutionary in itself. And the tool though, access data from the web only up to 2021. Now, then in 2023, the current year, as we know, just a couple months back, it was generative AI arm race begins, right? Microsoft comes up with Bing, right? They have ChatGPT capability there. Then Google then has the AI chatbot Bart, and then there are more kind of competition comes up, and OpenAPI then releases another, which is GPT-4, I should say. So, but then GPT-4 requires kind of a premium paid option to it too. And then as we are speaking now, there are new things coming out. So I may not even have to be able to get caught up to print it out here, but just to kind of, this is just to give you an idea, right? So it's kind of OpenAPI continue to release new versions of ChatGPT. So now let's take a look then. What is kind of able to kind of enable, right, us to be able to interpret human languages for machines is basically this studies on natural language processing, NLP. What is NLP, right? So it's an interdisciplinary subfield of linguistics of computer science. So basically, it's kind of both, right? Linguistics and computer science. And primary concern is to process natural language data sets, such as like text or speech corpora. So this means like huge sets of humongous, massive sets of data that it has. And it basically processes it. And these are unstructured data too, just want to point out. And then uses like rule-based or probabilistic machine learning approaches to it. And it enables, essentially enables computer to learn from the contents, including not just the contents itself and produce kind of rigidly produce things, but really it takes in that contextual nuances of the language itself, which is truly revolutionary. And ideally too is to be able to even draw insights from the document. So really starting to think like a human is what it's trying to do. Now then comes large language models, LLMs, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that too. What is LLMs? It is a type of machine learning model. And as such too, it's a foundation type of model, meaning they kind of form, kind of takes large, massive sets of data. that kind of forms the foundation is less maybe getting into some certain industry specific, let's say, or kind of any kind of branches of knowledge, but it's a bit more general kind of foundation type, of data set kind of model. So typically the pre-training consumes a humongous amount of resources, plenty full of GPUs. And in fact, I read somewhere that, forgot which GPT version, maybe it takes like 80,000 GPU hours. So you can imagine, right? If I have 800 GPUs, it would take 100 days in order to be able to process it, right? So that's just how it describes, right? 100 days is like more than 3 months. So as you can see, right, it takes at least like multiple weeks, if not months, kind of processing. And it costs a lot of money too. So it's not like normal people we do it. It's usually just done by, OpenAI or some, large organization that does it and has, investment for multiple companies, huge corporations. So what it does is it performs NLP tasks, and it generates and classifies the text, and it answers questions, answers the prompts like a human being. It analyzes sentiments too. And it's really amazing in the kind of chatbot conversations, making it more human-like, not just like, kind of machine. Okay, so some example, this is an API conference. So let's talk about the examples of some API frameworks that you can use to develop, AI applications. LangChain, that's one of them. So it enables you to basically, use this framework to work with LLMs. And then there's also Llama 2 from Meta. And as you heard, it starts with Llama and now it's Llama 2. That's free still at this point. And then Palm 2 comes from Google too. It works mainly with their Vertex AI too. So there are many more, but these are a bit more of the popular, kind of well-known ones too. And keep in mind too, I think these are mostly just Python at this point. And then if you're Java like myself, there are other ports too of Llama called JLlama, for example, from our company with somebody working on it. There's also other open source contributions. But let's now move into the exciting thing that actually DataStax has, which is, we're a database expert. We have added in this vector database search capability. And what is vector database, right? It is actually a purpose-built kind of database, right, that serves up vector data type for complex machine learning purposes. So as such, right, we're now looking into huge sets of data. You cannot use traditional methods like rows, like relational database, like rows and columns. It doesn't work. It's just not going to happen, or maybe it's going to take years. So we need new data types. And this is what it is leverage on, linear algebra. If you're a math person, that type of like vector way of operations. So these are vector data types, and they're multidimensional. And therefore complex machine learning purposes. And it relies on vector embeddings, right, which are numerical representations of the data that are stored in the vector DB. So the vector DB becomes very important too in this new age of GPT, because all of these data needs to be stored somewhere. So vector DB can come to the rescue. And it's an automatic feature engineering and leverages on the approximate nearest neighbor kind of technique, among other techniques too, but the approximate nearest neighbor, it appears to be the most efficient way of doing things. And what are vector embeddings being used for? For search, for clustering, recommendations, anomaly detection, diversity measurement, classification, right? So all of these is what vector embeddings are. Okay, now, looks like we may not have enough time to do the demo, but I'll quickly kind of share with you benefits. Basically, I call it ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, work being done for you by the bot. But the key is that you want to ask and ask the right question. So plenty of excitement. But with it though, with great power, also comes great responsibility. Be aware that there are lots of issues too with this kind of capability. There can be hallucinations when data isn't correct. So check that. Also, ethical concerns, potential misuse. Currently, nobody is there to oversee the usages too, so be aware. How about real-time data? Data you process, you train the data up to 2022. What about the time between beginning of 2022 and now, right? It's always kind of seem to be playing catch up. Okay, so with that, let me kind of end this talk now, just a minute left. And these are the resources. this is how you can access this slide deck if you like. And I will be sharing this with the organizer too. And this is the page too about DataStax, our vector search link, and also Cassandra. And also the middle one is astra.datastax.com is where you can sign up for a free Astra managed cloud platform, our Cassandra, with vector search. So please visit that. It will have plenty of examples to guide you through, and we're constantly adding new examples too. That's astra.datastax.com. And the rest are like about our streaming information, the documentation, as well as this one below is an example of Astra vector query search example. And this is our weekly podcast between myself and my colleague Aaron. We do this on our YouTube channel and also LinkedIn. So please subscribe to us there on YouTube or follow us on LinkedIn. I myself also have a Twitch stream. If you'd like to join me every Wednesday when I'm not traveling, I like to do some hands-on. So that's where I can show you more. And again, the summary is that DataStax product offerings. We have AstraDB with vector search and also real-time AI, the Cascada feature engineering. With that, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming to my talk today. Please stay in touch. This is my LinkedIn, kind of handle, LinkedIn URL. Follow me on Twitter. And also I have a Discord channel. Please, everybody, I welcome you to join me on the channel. And, we can start having more conversation. And with that, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you again. And thank you again to API Days Hong Kong.
Thank you, Mary, to share how to leverage the vector search to try to taste a bit on the Gen AI stuff. So for the next talk,
the API Connect Hong Kong 2023 conference is powered by bNovelty Limited. Check out more API-related education content on bnovelty.com or apidays.hk for more information.